Hello and welcome to this Good Friday meditation. This reflection has been adapted from a service written by Pastor Vince Kahadi. A word of warning. Jesus' death was brutal, and so this reflection is not suitable for children, nor is it suitable for those who may be triggered by acts of degradation and violence. There is no shame in leaving now and not listening. Jesus loves you and did all he did so you might live. Okay, find yourself in a comfortable position. Relaxed but awake. Take a couple of deep breaths. In and out. In and out. Now settle your breathing into its natural rhythm. And we begin. Close your eyes and picture Jesus. He stands alone before Pontius Pilate. Why doesn't Jesus say anything? Why doesn't he proclaim who he is? Why doesn't he confront the disbelief of the crowds and the arrogant cowardice of the powers that be? But he says nothing. Surely there are others who will speak up for him. Where are the lepers who were healed? Where are the blind who can now see? Where are all the people who ate the bread and fish on the hillside? Where are those who followed Jesus so easily when they thought he would become King of the Jews? Yet no one speaks. No voice in the crowd comes to Jesus' defense. Pilate cannot quiet the crowds, and for all his power he cannot find the courage to do what is right. So he does what is safe. Fearing a riot, he yields to the crowds and washes his hands, saying, "I am not responsible for the death of this man. This is your doing." And now picture Jesus in Pilate's courtyard. Cringe at the pain of the crown of thorns. And imagine more deeply the humiliation and degradation Jesus suffered, stripped naked for all to stare at. A stick in his hand and a scarlet robe on his shoulders. Soldiers making fun of him, bowing and mocking, "Long live the King of the Jews." Spitting, hitting and whipping. How cruel people can be towards their fellow human beings. There, in Pilate's courtyard, we see a true servant. He was willing to endure anything. No complaints, no protesting his innocence, no cursing, simply accepting the cross for us, enduring all things for us, the thorns, the whip, the mockery, the nails, the cruel death. He did it all for us. He loves us even though it is our sin that caused him so much pain. Next, imagine the awful weight of the cross Jesus carried. not just the physical weight of the beams of wood that pressed down on him, but also the weight of the burden that he carried for those whom he loved. He came to offer them life, and yet they return only death. So we see Jesus fall from the crushing weight of pain and grief. His physical strength is failing. The soldiers must have recognized this as well, because they forced a man from the crowd to help Jesus carry the cross the rest of the way to the place where he will be crucified. Simon from Cyrene was just a bystander, passing through on his way into town from the countryside, and yet he bears the weight of the cross to save Jesus' strength. I'd like to think that if I had been there, I would have rushed from the crowd and volunteered to carry that cross for Jesus. But would I have had the courage to face the Roman soldiers and risk being forced to walk with Jesus and his cross? Would I have really been so eager to share his cross, or would I have tried to be invisible in the crowd? When the soldiers were looking around for someone, would I have looked away and pretended not to notice what was happening? It's easy to pretend not to see the needs, the grief, and the suffering around us every day. It's easy to pretend not to hear the cries for help that come in many forms from those we walk amongst every day. It's easy to convince ourselves we're too busy or too tired, or have too much on our plates already to get involved in the lives of others. There are simply too many who need too much. And yet, let us remember something that Jesus said. Something about taking up our own cross and following him. Jesus said something about becoming a servant of all, of putting ourselves last and others first. Is this what it means to be a servant? Is Jesus showing us what it means to be that kind of servant? Is this man from Cyrene modelling us the path of discipleship? As Jesus struggles along the road towards that awful place of death, a group of women among the crowd following Jesus were crying, wailing, already grieving. So now, as Jesus bears the most unimaginable pain of body and heart, he shows incredible love and mercy. He is about to die and is suffering unbelievable pain, and yet he is more concerned with others. He stops to speak with them, to warn them of the pain and suffering that they and the whole nation of Israel will experience because of their rejection of their Messiah. Do we ever stop in the midst of our own troubles to express concern and to care for others? Or are we so caught up in living our own lives that we lose sight of what is happening in the lives of those around us? When he reaches the place where he is to be crucified, Jesus is forced to suffer the worst of human indignity. They strip him of his clothes and play games to see who will claim them. They thought Jesus was no different to the hundreds of other criminals that they crucified. But he is. He is completely different. Just yesterday, Jesus removed his cloak and laid it aside to wash his disciples' feet. And now he's allowing others to strip off his clothes. He could have stopped it. Stopped their gambling, stopped them stripping him. He could have stopped it all with a breath, with a word. Yet he doesn't. He allows them to publicly disgrace and ridicule him. He is left with nothing. Nothing, not even human decency. He gave away everything to be utterly humiliated, stripped naked for you, for me. Why? We have nothing of worth to give him. We can't pay him back for this. Where is our gratitude for this? Why does he allow himself to be so humiliated? Because of his total commitment to you and me. He lays aside everything for us. Take a deep breath as we come to the last awful step in this journey of death. Jesus is laid on the ground, his arms spread out, so his wrists are on the ends of the crossbar. A spike is driven through each of his wrist bones. The pain is excruciating. Jesus' body is hoisted into place, its weight pressing on his rib cage and lungs, making it almost impossible to breathe. A spike is driven through his feet. With painful effort, the condemned can push up on the spike in his feet to catch his breath, but to do so only prolongs the agony. Don't you want to rage at this injustice? The cruelty of the Romans, the hypocrisy of the high priest and religious leaders, the cowardice of the disciples, the treachery of Judas, the fickleness of the crowds. Don't they remember that Jesus only spoke of love, and even of loving our enemies? How could they be so cruel to the most perfect human who ever lived? And yet, would we have done differently? Are the guilty ones those who were actually there on that day and condemned him and hammered in the nails? Or is it human sin that drives in the nails? My sin. I want to pretend that I had no part in Jesus' indignity and death, but I was there. Jesus, you are here, dying because of my sin. I was there. It was I who drove the nails. Then at noon, the whole country gets dark. It seems that the heavens and the earth are grieving, telling us that something is horribly wrong. Jesus, I hear you cry out in lament from the Psalms, my God, why did you abandon me? It is the cry of human pain and desolation. Everyone has forsaken you, but there is one who still hears your prayer, the one you address as my God. The earth shakes. The curtain in the temple is torn right down the middle. The Holy of Holies is exposed for all to see. It is finished. What does it mean? Who are you? There is even a Roman who thinks that you are the Son of God. But you are dead. It's too late. What have we done? Is there any hope? Yet you never stop loving us, even in death. You died because of human sin, because of us. Sin is never the final word. God can redeem the worst that human beings can do. But this? What can come of this? What can God do with such a final ending? We hope and wait.